So when we look at the important progress that customers are trying to make in their lives, how likely is that underlying need or that progress likely to change? Most likely the underlying technology of how they make progress will change, just like the different music technologies that we looked at earlier. But what about the underlying units of progress that they want to make? Do you think people will still want to access and manage music in the future? Well, of course they will. Will they still use Spotify? Well, who knows? But you can bet that Spotify is probably already working on the next version of what music access and management tools look like, because that's the way they think, that's the way they work. They'll be well aware that streaming isn't necessarily the answer. Tomorrow there may be another model. So looking at progress that isn't changing very quickly gives us a much safer place to innovate from. But the temptation is to put all of our focus on what's changing the fastest, because that suddenly feels more urgent. And that's the technology. And it's another force that pulls us into that short-term focus that we looked at in Module 1 and Module 2. Now, the reality is we need this bifocal view, one that's got a view on today, making brilliant products today, the best products that we can today that help customers make progress, but also an eye on the future, and looking for how different ways of bringing value might show up in the future. So how does this link to trends? Well, when we look at the short term, we can look at easy to apply new technology that's emerging that can help users make some level of new incremental progress. It's unlikely we're going to come up with big breakthroughs in the short term. Usually that's a slower burn that comes from the long term. And when we look at the long term, we can put aside today's product and explore new technologies coming from the future and begin to imagine how the whole industry could be reinvented by delivering progress in brand new ways. And that's really where step change disruption occurs, and it's where companies build ongoing relevance into their future. So with that in mind, we can start to think about a portfolio of innovation experiments that we can be running at any time. What are the things that we can do now that are fairly predictable, they're likely to work, right through to these likely to fail experiments, one or two of which won't fail, they could become the game changers for tomorrow. So progress thinking is hugely important, and organizations that grasp this tend to be ones that are able to generate more profit, more customer loyalty. And I've got a whole workshop dedicated to how progress and future trends can integrate together. If you're interested, then give me a shout about that. So let's bring this together now. There's 4 statements that I want us to look at. So the first is the unit of analysis is user progress in context. I really want you to get hold of that and start to think about, what does user progress mean for your customers in the context in which they use your products and services? Make that the unit of analysis. Secondly, it is about the product, but it's not about the product. I hope you can see from what we've talked about in this module that product development is super important, but it can't be everything. We need to allow this agnosticism towards technology to have a stronger grip on us, so that we're not allowing today to make our tomorrow smaller. Thirdly, the outcome of innovation is users making better progress. It's not necessarily a better product. Often we're tempted to add new features and bells and whistles to products, and users don't really use them because they're not helping them do something important in their lives. And finally, progress thinking helps us to find the future more safely and easily, because we can look at the progress that isn't changing fast, and we can see into the future the technology that's coming, and we can ask the question, how could that stuff help our users make better progress? How can we help them be better users because of the technology that is coming from the future? So if you're interested in looking at this in more detail, there are some more resources in the book. I also did a TED talk that covers some of these ideas. You can look at that on YouTube and search in the TEDx section, Secret Life of Great Ideas. In the book, there's also what I've called an anti-friction workshop. And this is applying the ideas we've just talked about, but to your team environment. What progress is your team trying to make, and what gets in the way? What are the constraints? What's the friction? And how can we identify units of progress and create innovation around them so that our team performance increases? And finally, I have a much deeper dive masterclass on all of this stuff. It's video based. It's got a ton of tools that you can see there. So if this is an area that you think that you or your team would like to go deeper in, then have a look for that on the Be Less Zombie website. There's also some really good books out there written by some very smart people that if you want to go deeper in this, I thoroughly recommend you look at. You'll sometimes see this called Jobs to Be Done. That's a name that was given to it by the originators of this idea a few years back. So look out for those. They're definitely valuable resources. Just to recap, Innovation Particle, it's progress. It's the smallest, safest unit of pursuing bolder innovation. Use the Innovation X-ray to help you uncover the steps, the stages of progress that your customers and users are trying to make, and make that the unit of innovation. And when we do these things and we apply them to future trends, we can start to imagine more accurately the way that the future may look. So that's what we've covered. In the next session, we're going to be looking at designing catalytic questions. Now you've got some great insights. How can we turn those into questions that nobody else is asking that can provoke creative eruptions, bolder ideas because of the genius of the question that you posed in the first place? So I hope this has been useful. Don't forget to check out the book if you want to go further with this at belesszombie.com. It will give you some free resources and point you to where you can buy the book as well. Thank you very much, and I look forward to joining you again with the next module.